Board of Education meeting for Lewis Palmer School District 38. Ms. Wood, could you call the roll, please?
Ms. Phillips?
I am here.
Mr. Schwartz?
Here.
Mr. Taylor?
Here?
Ms. Upchurch?
Here.
And I believe Mr. Clausen is running just a few minutes late.
Okay. Thank you. To view this meeting's presentation documents, please access Board Docs. The link to the Board Docs website can be found via the D38 website, www.lewispalmer.org, on the Board of Education meetings webpage. To view the live stream video of this meeting, please go to the Lewis Palmer District 38 YouTube page. And Ron, would you be willing to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I would like to make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? Comments?
No, thank you.
Hearing none. Ms. Wood, would you call the vote?
Ms. Phillips?
Aye.
Mr. Schwartz?
Aye.
Mr. Taylor?
Aye.
Ms. Upchurch?
Aye.
Thank you all. So our first agenda item, B1, Dr. Summers, I'm going to turn this over to your capable hands.
Thank you very much, Mr. Taylor. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. And as some of you may know, we are here to start this evening's meeting with a celebration of our school board. So this is National School Board Recognition Month. And we have school board members who exemplify local citizen control and decision-making in education. They volunteer hundreds of hours and an immeasurable amount of energy to assure that our schools are providing the very best education possible for all of the children in our community. So as it is School Board Recognition Month, this is the perfect time to acknowledge their service to our students and our communities, especially during another complex and challenging school year. So we have several principals, staff, some students, some different folks in the audience that I am going to invite to come up and just do a little bit of a personalized thank you with some different items. Ms. Phillips, Ms. Upchurch, we're sorry you can't be here in person, but you will receive an assortment of gifts as we are able to catch up with you in that process, and we're just so thrilled that we're able to honor and recognize our school board members in this way. So I'm going to call each of our schools up in order. So we'll start with Bear Creek Elementary School, Mrs. Parsley.
Okay, the best thing about a school is the kiddos, so I'm not here to talk. I have a supporting crew here, and so some have children at our school, some have children in other schools in our district, and some have children that graduated from our district. So if you are from Bear Creek, including our PTO president, Mark, if you could please stand up while Stephanie Jensen and her boys, Hayes and Nolan, make their way up to make a presentation to you. We are fortunate enough, ladies and gentlemen, don't be shy, that Stephanie is not only mom, but a first grade teacher who came to our rescue when we had a teacher step away the first month of school.
We just wanted to say that about a year ago, our family began the search for a new home in the Colorado area. Coming over. And of course, as an educator, I'm sure that you can imagine that finding an incredible school district was at the very top of our list for things that I was considering when we were looking for areas to move. We heard nothing but amazing things about Lewis Palmer. So these are my boys. Do you want to tell them? Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Hayes in first grade. Hi, I'm Nolan and I'm in fourth grade.
So Hayes and Nolan are proud Bear Creek. You can see that we are a very proud Bear Creek family, which is why we wanted to make sure that we shared some of our swag with you as well, so the next time that you come visit us, that you can wear your BCES pride as well. So I began as a parent, and I fell in love with the teachers immediately, and then I stepped into the role of volunteer, and I fell in love with our administration and just all that they do to support our staff and our students. And then I began as a teacher in first grade, and I just fell in love with the district as a whole and all that you offer and the way that you make it such an incredible, secure, and sound place for our students to be and to grow and learn. So I'm gonna, Hayes, can you hold this for mommy? The microphone, thanks. So this is on behalf of all of us at Bear Creek, and we wanted you to know that you make a tremendous impact on all of us at BCES. So thank you very much for all that you do.
Thank you very much, Bear Creek Elementary presenters. So that will take us now to Lewis Palmer Elementary School. So, Mrs. Johnson.
All right, good evening, and thank you for having us. On behalf of Lewis Palmer Elementary School, I'm here by myself tonight, but I'd like to share with you, you will see in front of you a couple of things. There is a wooden rose to thank you for your service, and that's so that you can keep that forever. Along with that is a photo, and I'd like to explain the photo. It's a collage photo of students in our school. Our theme this year is, at Lewis Palmer Elementary School, you matter and you belong, and we're all part of one big red umbrella. So you will see in the photo pictures of each of our classrooms representing the thank you, the red umbrella, and you'll see your message at the bottom. Thank you for being part of our big umbrella. We appreciate you.
Thanks, Mrs. Johnson. From Palmer Lake Elementary, Mrs. Griebenow.
Good evening. Congratulations, you've made it through another term as school board members fairly unscathed. We appreciate that. We also know that the tone of our district is set from the top, and so your hard work and dedication to kids every day matters in our buildings, and we are deeply grateful for that. So thank you for showing up every day to do what sometimes is a very thankless job. So our gift, we decided not to do food this year because we inundated you with food last year. So you have giant thank you notes that kids signed. And what was interesting is I have kids in my building who are very aware of who you are and what you do. And so we split you up and you have a little personalized thank you note there. Yep. It's very elementary-esque, isn't it? You also have a notepad to take notes. Fill that with good things and gratitude and why you do what you do. And then you have a nice little Palmer Lake sticker that you can put on your computer or on your whatever you want because we think our community is pretty special. But again, thank you for all that you do to keep our district running smoothly. We deeply appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mrs. Griebenow. We'll go to Prairie Winds Elementary School, Mrs. Welch.
Hello, board, and those of you that are online. It's nice to see you guys tonight, and it's good to see everyone else as well. We made a picture that our children signed. As we know, we really stand behind the every student every day, so we wanted our students to sign a picture of Prairie Winds Elementary. We do appreciate your hard work and all that you do for our children, and then you can enjoy the chocolate that Peggy didn't bring. I did bring chocolate, so you can still eat a candy bar. Thank you.
Thanks, Mrs. Welch. I believe this bag is bestowed from the staff and community at Kilmer Elementary School. Unfortunately, Mr. Francis could not be here in person tonight to deliver that message, but I know he sends his regards on behalf of everyone from Kilmer. Is there anyone from Kilmer in the crowd that you, Mrs. Armstrong, would you like me to put you on the spot? Maybe. Oh, well, well done. We have school psychologists that can wear many hats. So, Mrs. Armstrong, anything you'd like to say on behalf of Kilmer community?
Well, I just want to echo the fact that you all serve in many, many ways that often go unvalidated and not recognized. So I certainly appreciate from an elementary level as well as secondary for all of the work that you do and the fact that you come and see what we're doing, and the students and families are able to see that you care. So that means a whole lot to us. So on behalf of Mr. Francis and our Kilmer staff, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mrs. Armstrong. And I think in her share out, she did a nice job of creating a segue into our secondary schools. So we'll go to Lewis Palmer Middle School and Mr. O'Connor.
Hi guys, it's certainly brave tidings indeed to take this upon yourselves during these times. It's been pretty tumultuous the last few years as far as what we've had to contend with, so your volunteering and advocacy are greatly appreciated. What you have from us before you, there's another gray shirt, but not the Bear Creek gray shirt. That is part of our social emotional learning program, the PRIDE, which stands for persistence, respect, initiative, dependability, and empathy. And one of our students designed that shirt, and we took it to print, and you have a copy of that for you. That's Henry Swindell, 7th grader, who designed that. So we appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mr. O'Connor. I believe we may have some students from Lewis Palmer High School in attendance. So come on up. If you can introduce yourselves, please, that'd be great.
Hi, I'm Tianyu. I'm student body president from Lewis Palmer High School, and this is my friend Maggie. She's senior class vice president, and Michaela, one of our freshmen on student council. And not gonna lie, I don't know what's in those bags, but I'm sure we're really thankful that you guys really represent our pillars of class, and we're really thankful for all you guys do in the community, and I'm sure we have some fun goodies in there to thank you for all you do.
Thank you very much.
Last but not least, I'd like to welcome Dr. Frank from Palmer Ridge High School.
Well, good evening, and it's fun to see high schoolers here. Thanks for coming. We just want to thank you from PR for all that you do. There's no question a healthy school board has an enormous and immeasurable impact on the entire district, and that goes without question. And so I personally appreciate everything you've done and are doing, and I know that our PR community thanks you as well. So we provided you with a little card that is from our student council. So I don't even know what they wrote you. Those were sealed. And then, Mr. Taylor, we gave you a larger card that's from our staff that's to the entire board. And then each of you, we also provided a paperweight that has our current motto that we're running with this year, which is excellence with equity. And the staff has really embraced that to continue the excellence that we have at PR, and then also move towards as equitable of a environment as we can for all students. So hope you enjoy that paperweight.
And we appreciate the bear claw.
That's right. Go Bears. Rangers too.
Thank you, Adam.
So it's my privilege then, which thank you again for everyone coming out to bestow appreciation and gratitude for this wonderful school board that I have the privilege and pleasure to continue to serve. So your service, your sacrifice, your stewardship of this community is, I hope you know, noticed, appreciated, and we look forward to building off of success as well as continuing to embrace the challenges that are within us and how we're moving this system forward, as well as serving every student every day in our community, as well as all our families and community members. So we do have one more additional, and I'm sorry, again, Ms. Phillips, Ms. Upchurch, you'll get this in person, but we have a really nice and new logo notepad that we will present. So the first I will hand, here's Mr. Taylor, Mr. Clausen, and Mr. Schwartz. I'll come down to you. And Mr. Taylor, unless there's anything else you want to speak to right now, I'll just turn it back over to you. How's that sound?
I am going to take a moment and say, number one, I always appreciate a gratitude journal, and I have lots to be grateful for, so this will get used. This doesn't look like a gratitude journal. What was the purpose here again? I'm sorry.
Gratitude and other as assigned.
Here's other. Much appreciated. You know, when we serve, you know, we are elected, and we chose to run for election to serve in our community. And I would just say that I've grown personally a lot over the last 4 years, and I've appreciated all the feedback. Some of it is a little negative towards me personally. Some of it's very positive toward me personally. But that 80 or 90% in the middle is valuable, and it helps inform my perspective in my service. And I think I can speak for the other board members, likewise, that they appreciate the feedback. And we're here because of kids. I heard that's mentioned a couple times, and this is about our future. Our kids are our future, and that's why we're here. So thank you very much. The next agenda item is B2, public comments. Do we have the sign up? All right, I have 7 signed up, so it's 3 minutes apiece. We should have plenty of time for everyone. Per board policy BEDH, public participation at school board meetings, all regular and special meetings of the board shall be open to the public. Because the board desires to hear the viewpoints of all citizens throughout the district and also needs to conduct its business in an orderly and efficient manner, it shall schedule time during board meetings for brief comments from residents and property owners of the district, parents, and employees. There is one time for public comment, and it is limited to 30 minutes. In an effort to allow all who wish to speak, the amount of time dedicated to each speaker will be dependent on the number of people who sign up, with the entire public comment period not exceeding 30 minutes. If 10 or fewer people sign up, each person will have 3 minutes to address the board. The sign-up sheet for public comments will be available at 5 p.m. in the Learning Center. The board respects the rights of the public to speak on matters concerning the operation of the schools. We believe that public comments that are critical of district staff, however, often cause unnecessary harm to those employees and to the education of our students. As a result, we prefer that members of the public share any criticism of employees in writing with the superintendent, who is responsible for supervising all staff, and then involving the board as necessary. If you choose instead to address a personnel issue publicly, please understand that the board does not endorse the comments of any speaker and reminds all who speak that they assume the risk of legal action by district employees in the event the affected employee believed that any comments about them violate legal standards. In addition, speakers may be asked to appoint a spokesperson if the topic is a group concern. Lastly, keep in mind we may have K through 12 students in the audience or online. Please keep all comments appropriate to your audience. So the first person on our list is Jackie Burhan.
Hello. So I'm Jackie Burhans, a community member and parent alumni. And I came to say that a couple of board meetings ago, I heard the students of Lewis Palmer Middle School speak about the No Place for Hate program. I was so impressed with these kids, how articulate they were, how brave they were. I was kind of impressed with the board too for how you guys handled it. And I think this is a tremendous program, and I give my kudos to Principal Oconnor and to the counselor, Emily Hleska, who have sponsored it, and to all who are participating. And that's why the following board meeting, I was pretty surprised to see all the negative comments about it. I'm pretty sad about that too, but I remember when we first introduced the program, Path to Empathy in the middle school, what a big outcry there was about that program as well. And I have to say, looking at both of those, I find it hard to imagine that a anti-empathy, pro-hate position is really a good look for anybody. And yet there are people who feel that way. I looked into the program a bit more, and a couple things struck me that really made me feel like, wow, this is really important for kids these age at this stage in their growth. One is that this is student-centered. This is run by the students. They get to decide how it's run, how often they meet, what they address. And the other is that it's customizable for the school. There's no, set thing that you must do or must not do. You get to decide what's going to work for you in your school. I thought those were very great characteristics of the program. I think this program gives kids a chance to gain the courage to stand up and speak out when they see something that isn't right. But I think they are not the only ones with this responsibility. It is the responsibility of parents, community members, teachers, staff members, administration, and board members as well to speak out when something isn't right. So I hope that we will all remember that and all do that and try and support these kids and not attack them. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Jackie Burhan. James Howell.
I also want to say how impressed I was by the courage and the commitment of the students who presented the No Place for Hate program at the November school board meeting. Sadly, those students and that program are now being attacked on social media. I'm going to read some of those posts tonight. To be clear, I did not write these posts. Okay, here we go. Parents need to watch this and know that Lewis Palmer Middle School has this program called No Place for Hate. It is indoctrinating students to spread CRT and the LGBT agenda. These students are trained, brainwashed in this fashion, and then go class to class bullying their fellow students to join into this cult and promote their CRT and LGBT agenda. This is the type of indoctrination that should make taxpayers consider learning what needs to be done to rescind the $4 million a year MLO we graciously give D38 every year. Maybe if we let the schools know if this continues, they will lose this local funding. In short, it's a nice school district you've got here. It'd be a shame if something happened to it. So here's another one. I'm only going to read part of this one. In fact, these brainwashed kids are doing all the bullying. First, the teacher or counselor at LPMS has indoctrinated them in Jim Jones fashion. Then they are going to go around school and spread their cult-like mantra to other students. In effect, these kids are the actual bullies now. Shame on D38 leadership for allowing this to happen. At the rate LPMS has embraced the CRT and the gay agenda, I can't believe D38 will ever need another seat in their middle school. Watch this video and see for yourself what goes on at LPMS. They brainwash these kids so they can go around the entire school, classroom to classroom, and bully other kids to sign up to their gay agenda and white privilege indoctrination. This is criminal behavior being forced on the rest of the school by a few bullies. So if anybody had any doubts about the value, the importance, the necessity of this program, I think these posts speak to that. Thanks.
Thank you, James. Karen Heater?
Hi, I'm Karen Heater, and I am here tonight as a parent, and I have missed being here. Thank you to the board for all you do. Two subjects, and I'll fit them both into 3 minutes. Boy, I am here first and foremost to recognize the paras in our district. Most of you know the student I have needs a little bit of extra support, and when I was at Lewis Palmer Elementary, boy, they were the saving grace for his elementary school career. And honestly, I was petrified to put him in the middle school. I had heard all these things about 1,000 children and not enough teachers, and I was very fearful for him. And now that it's January and we can breathe, oh my goodness, they are incredible. The middle school has the counselors, the paras, the support staff. And I then have applied to be a substitute teacher and realized how much these people make. And it was a little disconcerting to realize that the men and women who spend their time, they're not just educating our kids, they're loving our kids, they're establishing the trust with our kids. If our kids can't trust the adults in their school, they can't trust themselves. You all know, the paras get spit on, they get bit, they get beaten up. And I'm sorry, I'll cut to the chase, for less than $15 an hour. 2 times this past week, I've gone to retail stores in Monument, and I've seen teachers with a second job. Shouldn't happen. And I'm wondering, I know that we're pretty good about not, giving bonuses and raises to the upper administration. And Casey, I know with your superintendent interviews, you wanted to boost the teachers. So I know the intent is there. So I just wanted to speak about helping our teachers and paras get the compensation that'll keep them here and not leave our district. The second thing is this whole no place for hate thing. Good Lord. We have to have a place that there is no hate, or at least we rein it in and show the majority of the students that hate isn't the way to go. Exclusion is not the road that we want to put our kids on. And for the people who think it's a gay agenda, if that were the case, I'd volunteer to be president, but it's not. It's about religious differences. I heard an evangelical student in my neighborhood tell our Catholic neighbor that they're not Christians, and there's all kinds of religious differences and educational differences and socioeconomical differences. The No Place for Hate is student-led, and those of you who know me know that I was very involved at the school. I have seen the majority of those kids grow up from first grade on, and I guarantee you those kids were born leaders. They are mentors, they are role models, and if you think that Ms. Haleska is telling them what to do or indoctrinating, I have a feeling it might be going both ways. I applaud the school for supporting that group, and I applaud the parents who have put their kids in that group, who hopefully can keep 950 other students safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karen. Kimberlee Walsh.
Good evening. At the last board meeting, many concerned parents spoke regarding the concerns for the No Place for Hate program at the middle school. The presentation given a few months ago by the students at the middle school immediately raised red flags for us. As a parent in the audience, it was really uncomfortable to watch. We went home, did some research on the program, hoping that our suspicions were incorrect. Unfortunately, after delving further into the program, we were alarmed at what we found. This program is run by the ADL, which is a highly partisan, politicized group. The No Place for Hate handbook states that all incidents must be reported to the ADL, and the school must cede significant power over its day-to-day operations to the ADL. According to the handbook, schools are expected to notify the ADL when any incident of bias, bullying, discrimination, or harassment occurs. Why do we want to allow a national activist group into our schools? We have a 6th grader who really wants to go to the middle school, be with her friends. So last week I toured the middle school. I was disappointed to see that there are many large, prominently displayed banners showcasing No Place for Hate, rainbow posters displaying safe space on the majority of the classrooms, and a flyer for the Rainbow Alliance Club in the hallway. These posters and banners are the primary focus around the school, and I hardly saw any other photos, art, etc. The many rainbow posters are simply empty virtue signaling, as the entire school should be a safe place, right? If the teacher chooses not to hang a rainbow poster on their door, are they any less a safe space? The fact that these kids see this all day, every day, desensitizes them to it. It's not the school's job to teach our kids about gender fluidity or sexualize our kids. In addition, the Rainbow Alliance Club poster was just as concerning to me as No Place for Hate. The Rainbow Alliance is an organization that's geared toward gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgendered, queer, and allied community. By putting this propaganda all over the schools and in prominent places violates the very policy that says we will not indoctrinate. These kids are just coming out of elementary school, and these ideologies are not appropriate for them. My 6th grader doesn't know what these are, and I don't want her to, and I should be the one to teach her what they are. It's more appropriate at the college level. Recently, a school system in Texas withdrew their affiliation with No Place for Hate after using it for over 2 decades. They cited the reason for being concerns that were brought up by the community. They're now working on creating an in-house character education program that best meets the needs of their students. I feel that we would be much better off doing the same thing. We need to emphasize the positive rather than focus on the negative, and we definitely need to keep the ADL out of our schools. We'd like to see you add this to your agenda to discuss it further, and we'd appreciate an update on what your findings are. Thank you.
Thank you, Kimberly. I have another Kimberly.
Yes, hi, I'm Kimberlee Drozdick. I have a daughter in 1st grade in the district, and I have been coming to the board meetings now for a while. And after reading, observing, and seeing the information throughout these many months regarding the pandemic and seeing how political things have gotten into our school systems, I would like to see some additional resolutions or items added to the board meetings for D38 as well. I listened to a work session from earlier this month, and the No Place for Hate was brought up. While I couldn't make out all that was said, I thought I heard someone say that they felt they had already addressed the issue with another resolution. That resolution is called Teaching About Controversial Issues and Use of Controversial Materials. But here we are. It is currently in our schools and hasn't been dealt with. I have seen pictures of all the posters, ADL pledges throughout the middle school, and they are placed in prominent places for everybody to see. My thing is, what about children of faith who, like the previous Kimberly said, her daughter doesn't know about it yet? What about our role as a parent to be able to do that and not have our school district tell them how to think, what to think, and be bullied and pressured into that? As a parent, I would like to see No Place for Hate issue be talked about further and have transparency about how this program was brought into the middle school, and for the school district to look at alternative programs that are about bringing individuals together through positive reinforcement, not always looking for bullying situations, but positive is better than negative. Not what the ADL has outlined on their website, and I do want everybody to go there to make their own thoughts up, not hear what we all have to say about it, but read it for yourself. It's very important to be knowledgeable and see facts, not what other people say. They are a strong political arm of the Democratic Party, and we need a program that is neutral. I also want to understand the ramifications of the Colorado Department of Education's agenda to add topics that are not appropriate for our children, and if these revisions topics are passed. I continue to do my due diligence to write emails and voice my concerns, but to honestly have to fight a curriculum that brings in sex and sexuality into our elementary schools. Again, please go to the revisions on the CDE website. They are there in bright red. It's really hard for me to swallow that kind of thing. How do I explain that to my 1st grader as well? We've all have children. If we don't, we have grandchildren, or we have neighbors, we have family members. This is not appropriate for other people to teach this to our children. I do want to thank board member Tiffany Upchurch for letting us know about these social study revisions, because for far too long, these issues have been installed in our curriculum under the radar and under parents' noses. I believe that these policies are to strip away the core values this country was founded on, which is faith, which is family, which is freedom. I am a Christian, and I believe in freedom to follow my faith. I should not have to fight a school district that wants to tell me how to think and feel, and I want to raise my child the way I want to raise her and send her to a place that I feel she is safe at being. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kimberly. Michael O'Hare?
Thank you. I worked on some of your campaigns here on the board, so I'm really proud of the job you've been doing, so thank you very much. James and Jackie, you guys might be woke, but the parents of D38, we're awake. I'm going to address that. So from the beginning of the pandemic, Fauci, Walensky, health officials, our politicians, even our own doctors, they lied to us. As a result, hundreds of thousands of American citizens needlessly died. Now the truth is coming out. The lies are being exposed. And this is not what the experts say. I'm not quoting a report from an alphabet agency. These conclusions are from the data, and the data is irrefutable. The lockdowns were destructive. The masks did not slow the spread. The vaccines were neither safe nor effective. And the irony of all ironies is that the safe and effective prophylactics and treatments were restricted, banned, and ridiculed. Now, I want to speak, because we're here at the school board meeting, about our children. If it was not heinous enough of what happened, Fauci, Walensky, our political leaders, begged, pleaded, and mandated that we sacrifice our children to protect our adults and protect the elderly. After approving the vaccine, an FDA doctor said, I can't even believe this, we're never going to learn about how safe the vaccine is until we start giving it to 5-year-olds. This is shameful. This is unethical. This is immoral. This is depraved. What kind of sick and depraved society sacrifices their children to protect the adults and the elderly with untested vaccines? Our children are not lab rats. They're a gift from God. We must protect and nurture them. And if so be it, sacrifice our lives for them. The vaccines have maimed, poisoned, and even killed many of our children. Cases of myocarditis, pericarditis in our youth have skyrocketed. And we do not know what the long-term damage may be. Strokes, heart attacks, cancers, even the sterilization of our daughters. All for what? I ask you, all for what? COVID was never a threat to our children. But we are attuned. We know what's going on. And no amount of fear and no amount of lies will make us go away. We are awake, and there will be a great reckoning. And those that took away our freedoms, violated our rights, poisoned our bodies, sacrificed our children, killed off the aged and the infirm, tore up our Constitution, brought tyranny to our land, to our entire world, they will pay for their crimes against humanity. And there is hope. But there is hope that may arise from the ashes of this catastrophe. Let us not take our freedoms for granted anymore. Let us remake our government. Let's remake our government so that its sole mission is to guarantee and protect our rights and never take them away ever again. And let us be a better, freer, and more just society where all men and women are truly free and their freedoms are inalienable. Because if you are not free, you cannot be safe. Thank you.
Melinda Zark?
I'm here to thank you for your handling of COVID this school year, and I'm asking you to do the right thing when it comes to the rainbow signs that are hanging all over our schools. And the reason why I'm even bothering to bring this up is I'm making the point to you that these rainbow signs, whether you agree with the thought that you think is behind them or not, they are political signs. The rainbow logo is political. It's a political symbol. It symbolizes the LGBT coalition that activists cobbled together for political expediency. It's political branding. What the cross is to religion, the rainbow flag is to politics. And everyone here knows it. What I'm asking for is a more honest enforcement of your policy, Section K, that says it's for posting of non-curricular materials. In it, there's a list of unacceptable material. Political signs are on the list, and they're described as material which in any way promotes, favors, or opposes the candidacy of any candidate for election. So then the question becomes, does anyone use rainbow flag issues to promote candidates? Well, yes. The Democrat Party specifically uses rainbow flag issues to promote candidates. It's part of their platform. They slam Republicans for not supporting the coalition on the DNC website. They have a whole page complaining that the GOP endorses discrimination, condemns marriage equality. They complain about Trump's ban on transgender people in the military. Now, it doesn't matter how you feel about these issues. You cannot deny that this signage is political and that it violates district policy. So whatever else people think these rainbows mean, the fact is that they function as Democrat campaign signage. It doesn't matter that other districts are doing it or allowing them. These signs, they need to come down and be replaced with other signs that say lovely, nice things and preach to everyone to be nice to each other. But please send out a memo saying the signs violate district policy and they cannot stay up. I appreciate your efforts in correcting this. Thank you.
Thank you, Melinda. That was the end of our public comments. We'll now move to agenda item B3, which is board member comments. And I'll try and go in the normal order here. So, Matt, would you be willing to begin? And by the way, welcome.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Mr. Taylor. Sometimes I have a hard time judging the I-25 corridor as I'm heading up here from the Springs. I want to thank everyone for the nice gifts and the appreciation, but you know, quite frankly, as one board member, I'm on the board because it's all about the kids, and that was my campaign slogan, and that's why I've spent 6 years of my time serving on the board. I also want to thank our teachers that have done a fantastic job this semester and have been instrumental in helping us keep the majority of our schools open and maskless. Also want to thank my fellow board members for taking time out of their schedules to likewise serve on the board. And also wanted to express my appreciation for the parents here tonight, expressing your concerns regarding various issues. Please know we listen, and you know, at times you educate us, and we appreciate that. So that's all I have, Mr. Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Clausen. Ron?
Also, a quick note of thanks for all the unnecessary gifts, but we do enjoy them. And as we mentioned in the last board meeting, all the board members discuss exactly why we do this, so I don't want to be redundant in that regard. But ultimately, I also think it's valuable for us to thank the administrators and Dr. Summers and their staff. We attempt to set direction policy, but it's of no value unless it's executed on well and crisply, and they seem to do a wonderful job of that. So thank you, guys. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Schwartz. Ms. Upchurch?
I'll be brief. I want to actually, as one board member, share my appreciation with my fellow board members. I think we work well as a team, and it's been an honor and a privilege to serve. When I set out to serve on this board, there was 3 things that were at the top of my mind, and they're still at the top of my mind, and that is to serve our students and be able to reach and teach each of our kids right where they are, to support and reward our amazing teachers in our district and our staff in our district, and to continue to listen to and lean into and collaborate with our community. All of these kids and all of these teachers are our kids. And I really do believe we are all in this together. So I appreciate that the words that have been shared tonight, both in writing and in person. And I apologize that I can't be there tonight. I think I've only missed maybe 1 board member so far in the last 4.5 years. So I think that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany. Ms. Phillips?
Good evening. I wanted to first recognize Miss Wood, because as much as I will echo what my fellow board members have said, we wouldn't function as well as we do except that we have her on board. So thank you, Miss Wood. And I'd also like to recognize the time that the school principals, the parents, and the students took to attend tonight's meeting. Thank you very much for coming down. It's always a pleasure to hear and see you. I am watching the video as well. I am really grateful for the culture of appreciation in our community, and our values are always represented in our actions. I especially appreciated hearing Lewis Palmer Elementary School's guiding phrase for the year: you matter, you belong, and I would add, we care. And to that point, I was at the actually virtually tuned in to the Prairie Winds Elementary School PTO meeting last week, and I learned what a fantastic service 7 parents have come forward and volunteered or gone through the process to substitute teach in their own children's schools. And so thank you to all of you in our community who are engaged, who are volunteering, and who are stepping forward to help and support our entire school district. All of that is reflected in our community-wide effort toward educating our kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. So I don't have anything prepared, but my heart is full of gratitude because of the recognition of our service. But the thought occurs to me, and I'll probably go out on a limb here and fall. The limb will break and I'll crash and burn. But I'm going to do it anyway. So, you know, my understanding of a rainbow came from the Bible. And the rainbow was given to humanity as a sign that the world would not be flooded again. I'm not going to, you can fact check me. I mean, I maybe got it wrong, but the point is, that's what I learned. I also truly believe that all lives matter. We're all children of God, which kind of makes us related as human family. We're all in a boat together. So when I hear things like Black Lives Matter, it sounds to me like, well, we're going to set them apart and hold them up as an exception to the rest of humanity. When I hear comments like I heard tonight about a rainbow being some flag or something toward a coalition of a certain group of people, well, then we're going to set them up and we're going to treat them differently. When I was here in November, I frankly was a little bit, I don't know if anybody remembers, but you can go look at the video. When they asked me my reaction, I said, well, I'm fearful. And I was fearful about the reaction that would occur when we set certain people aside to say, we've got to protect them because they're special. Now, I'm aware of special needs in education, and it's real, and I'm not going to try and downplay it. I'm aware of the concept of equity, that everyone should have equal opportunity to be educated. I have no problem with those things. Everything I've just talked about, I don't have any problem with, except when we use it for partisan purposes. Because we're adults. And I do not appreciate the concept that adults would use partisanship in our schools. And I will fight to avoid that. I think this is a place, our education system is a place for love. My good wife taught for 25 years, a few of those years in this school district. And I still, today, meet people who are now adults that love my wife. So, as far as I'm concerned, education and the education of our children is a responsibility of the parent. And the parent and the teacher partnership is foundational for the love, the well-being, the education, the growth of every child. I have met with so many students over different times, and I love their innocence, particularly in the elementary schools, because they'll ask whatever's on their mind. And I love that. And it isn't my role to shame them if they say something silly. Now, there's no place for bullying. There's no place for hate. I agree with that in principle. But if it's being used to drive an agenda, it is not okay. In our work session earlier this month, I asked that we explore all curriculum to ensure that it's in alignment with our policy about, what is it, KEH? KE something. About a policy we just passed. I also ask for the district to give us an understanding of how we are trying to prevent pornography from existing within our schools. This is a dangerous plague on our society. So we are aware of the dangers that exist for our children. They are real. I want, personally, as a single board member, my goal is for children to be in an environment where they feel safe to express themselves, to be able to learn, and to be able to speak with their parents about what they're learning and be informed as it relates to their own personal values at home. And I just want to say that through my time here, we get distracted on details all the time. But at the big picture level, the conversation that I've heard tonight and what I'm reflecting is why we're here, is to give these kids the very best opportunity to succeed as adults. And it requires parents and it requires teachers to work together to accomplish that. None of us come from ideal homes. It would be an interesting experiment just to take every one of you and have you share your story with me, because we all have a story. And our kids are going to have a story as well. And my hope and my prayer and my dedication in this role is to ensure that what they have a story to tell about Lewis Palmer School District 38 was, gosh, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Now, they may not say that when they're 16 and 17 and 18, but when they're 25, 30, and 40, they may look back and say, boy, am I ever glad I went to school there. And that's what I hope. And that's not this year. I hope you heard me. That's a long-term goal for these kids' lives, and that's what really matters. So I don't apologize for anything I've just said. If I've offended anybody, send me an email and explain that to me. I'm happy to hear it. But, you know, I enjoy this service, and I'm going to stand by those convictions that I've tried to express. And I hope that it was clear what I'm trying to say. And with that, Dr. Summers, it's your turn.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor, and all of our board members for their comments. I'm going to invite, I believe Mr. Belcher is going to help me with the presentation that has been prepared for you in an effort to share updates consistent with our strategic plan, as well as some other highlights and celebrations over the past month or so. So we'll dive right in and start with a priority 1 update, not to be a comprehensive update here, but just to share with you some really good news. As I think we've shared the past couple of meetings, we continue to be recipients of a variety of grant dollars. Our most recent successful grant at the helm of Ms. Tiffany Brown, our MTSS and culturally diverse coordinator, submitted a grant for the Colorado Multi-Tiered System of Supports. This is a 4-year grant, which will total about $90,000 over 4 years. We have 2 schools who are going to be the focus of year 1 implementation, including Lewis Palmer Elementary and Bear Creek Elementary. And then over the next 4 years, we'll have additional schools, at least 4, that will be joining this grant. And this is really about strengthening holistic supports for all students and making sure that we have good systems in place. Something else we did want to highlight in an effort, and I hope you'll see some overlap in some of these different priority updates. So as you know, we recently had the support to make a change in our calendar. So this Wednesday, January 26th, is a full day of PLC work, and something that was put together in pretty short time with Mr. Rick Frampton's support and leadership, as well as other leaders in our system. We have something pretty unique. So we don't often get the opportunity to do deep dives into paraprofessional training, but we will have 111 paraprofessional staff across our system that are going to receive in-depth training and an opportunity to collaborate with each other around universal and differentiated student behavior support techniques. So recognizing that we do have a variety of student behaviors that we are in a position to help address and support, we're really excited about what that training will do for our staff as well as for our students. As you're accustomed to, we are sharing the updated numbers in reference to confirmed cases among staff and students as of today. So you see the current number breakdown on the left-hand column, the school year total in the right-hand column. And I think we've talked quite a bit about updates and some changes to where we're at with this particular variant and how all of that is playing out. I would just elevate what was also shared earlier in that our staff continue to be flexible, adaptable to a variety of situations, and it has not been easy at all, but we really appreciate how we have continued to keep our schools open and supportive of in-person learning, and so we just wanted to make mention of that within our COVID update. Moving on to priority 2. So another grant that I do believe we've touched on briefly, but just wanted to reiterate, is we received $500,000+ specific for the purchase of Chromebooks for our students through this grant. So that really upgrades our ability to apply those devices to a variety of students across all of our schools upgrades the accessibility and the user life of those devices, and our tech team has done a wonderful job of that with Chris Mack's leadership and his folks. We also wanted to just call out the mid-year inductee summit that is going to occur this week. So we have a number of mentors, teacher mentors, as well as mentees. So this will be a celebration of where they are midway through the year in terms of teacher induction, and recognizing that there is still a lot in front of our mentees as they're finishing out the first year of their induction program. So just wanted to call that out as well. Priority 3.
Summers,
I'm sorry?
just a quick question, if I may.
Sure.
Can you clarify how many Chromebooks $500 plus $1,000 is equal to?
Ms. Wetstein?
Okay, that'd be great. Just of interest. Thank you.
Sure, no problem.
They're typically, depending on the software you load on them, around $500 a pop.
That sounds about right. I want to say I've heard a number somewhere in the 1,000 area or more. So I think we're talking probably a 4-digit number. We'll make sure to get that more accurately represented. As I mentioned earlier, we do have our first spring semester PLC day that is upcoming. So again, just a lot of coordination and effort that's taking place across all of our school sites on that particular day. And we also want to obviously recognize the flexibility of our families and their support in helping make all of that happen. I will do just a brief prelude, which is we will have a mid-year compensation recommendation that we'll be presenting to you all later in this board meeting as part of our budget adjustments for the year. Our priority 4 update includes our first financial advisory committee launch, which is scheduled for tomorrow, January 25th. So really appreciate those individuals in the community who are making time to be part of that committee, as well as the efforts of Mr. Schwartz, Ms. Overton, Mr. Belcher, and the whole group. This evening, again, you will hear our detailed budget adjustment presentation in alignment with our flexible budgeting process, as well as the completion of our audit. And then we are in the process of beginning our upcoming budget preparation efforts for the 22-23 school year. We won't go into a lot of detail with that tonight, but as you can already expect, there will be a lot of opportunity for feedback, dialogue relating to the development of this upcoming school year budget. So we invite everyone to be involved and participating in that. As the board has already discussed, moving into priority 5, we desire to provide more opportunities for what we're referring to right now as community empowerment sessions / board listening sessions. We would like to spend a little bit more time with you all going into next work session, February 1st, to make sure that we have an effective plan prepared that we can launch going into the spring, as well as setting the tone for continued engagement and empowerment as we move through the year. And then we do have something that we're really excited to share with you in terms of our new Kudos program, staff Kudos program. So we have a number of staff members who have been nominated this month so far. And you see their names here on the screen. What I'm going to ask Mark to do is actually pull up the link to the news.lewispalmer.org site. And so what you can see as you scroll down here are a variety of different links and stories. So in the January Kudos edition for staff members who have received essentially special recognition or nomination from other staff members in the system, so you can get a feel for how those staff kudos are lining up and taking shape. So we are encouraging anyone and everyone to access that link and to continue to celebrate and acknowledge the kudos for those efforts that we see from our staff. And then there's a few more noteworthy updates here. So we have a Palmer Ridge High School senior, Dia Suri, who has earned a trip to Washington, D.C. by winning 2nd place in the Mountain View Electric Association Youth Leadership Trip Contest that she will be taking this summer. So congratulations to Dia. Also, our Palmer Ridge High School Knowledge Bowl team was named the 2022 Region 5 champions, 4th year in a row for this accomplishment. And note about a fierce competition this year from our students and advisors, so shout out to all those individuals. As well as just a celebration of the 8th grade and 6th grade nights that are on display at each of our school sites. So that includes Lewis Palmer High School and Palmer Ridge, which hosted their 8th grade nights, as well as the Lewis Palmer Middle School 6th grade night that's going to be hosted later this week. And then just last but not least, additional recognition with our fabulous board members. So that concludes at least the slideshow presentation of the update. Are there any questions or anything else I can speak to from the board?
Any questions or comments from the board? Thank you, Dr. Summers.
Thank you.
The next agenda item is C1, Portrait of a Graduate. And I think Jess McAllister, yep.
Yeah, let me do a quick intro. Come on up, Ms. McAllister, our Career and Technical Education Coordinator, and many other hats that she wears so well. So she is going to do a quick introduction here and share out what you will be looking forward to in the Portrait of a Graduate update here. Thanks for being here, Jess.
Sure. Hi, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so thanks for having us. Happy National Board Member Appreciation Month. We're happy to be here tonight. So as Dr. Summers mentioned, my name is Jess McAllister. I'm the Secondary Programs Coordinator. I'm on the Learning Services team, which is what's associated with Priority 2. So this has been a milestone that we have really been looking forward to for quite some time, to share out some of the work that has been underway this past semester in regards to the Portrait of a D38 graduate. So I'm going to speak for just a moment and share a little bit about the process, and then I'm going to turn it over to our 2 student interns to dig deeper into the project and then to unveil the first rendition of the Portrait of a Lewis Palmer graduate. So here's a little bit about the process. I became aware of this initiative in August and some of the expectations and objectives that were associated with it, to include primarily that it should be a student-led effort. So to me, the best course of action at that point was to go ahead and employ student interns. And I set to work creating a scope of work for them that would include some skills and experience in journalism and data collection, data analysis, and of course, graphic design. I spoke with the folks in the communications department because they had already had some interns that they were working with, and of course, the 2 interns that we have secured with us, Olivia and Addison, rose quickly to the top. So the 3 of us began working right away and just getting organized and putting a plan together. We established some timelines. We have an organizational structure, just how to remain organized and stay in touch with each other. And then, of course, starting to develop those interview questions to kind of ask the different constituents that we were interviewing the questions that pertain to them. So those constituents included alumni, current students from elementary all the way through high school, parents, guardians, community members, industry partners, and the list goes on. Once we had those in hand, we set to work, or I should say they set to work, interviewing the different groups. So you'll see those in that middle part of the slide there under research. They were very, very busy doing so, and their interview tactics included primarily in-person interviews, but we did use some email interviews and some a Google survey at one point. We had an activity that we walked through with the DAC. So they had met their goal of completing that research and collecting all of their data by December 7th. And that's when they got really busy analyzing that data and putting their image together. So I am now proud to introduce you to our 2 wonderful interns, very talented. Addison Hayworth is a current senior at Lewis Palmer High School, and Olivia Jones is a recent graduate of Palmer Ridge High School. And they're going to make their way on up here to share with you guys a little bit more detail about this project, and then, like I said, unveil for you the first rendition of the Portrait of a Lewis Palmer grad.
Good evening.
So we were given this project about August, and in the beginning we had no idea what the end result was going to be, nor did we know what it was going to be used for. But this was our initial inspiration.
So this was the first thing we were given. So Colorado wants Colorado wants the students of our schools to be taught certain things outside of like math and English, and so we were given this portrait of a D38 graduate. So the things that they want to teach are communicator, problem solver, community member, and empowered individual. And so we were given definitions for all these words, and we were just tasked with finding anyone and everyone we could talk to see how D38 did these.
So we had 3 steps to our process. First was collecting data, then analyzing that data, and then finally designing our final poster. In our process of collecting data, we went to all sorts of groups, community members, students, teachers, parents, and we talked to them about the 4 main categories presented in the slide prior. And we just wanted to see how we best prepared our students to go not only to college, but also careers after high school.
So then we analyzed all our data. So after we had all these interviews with a bunch of people, emails and phone calls and a lot of things from schools, and we were wondering in which way we could analyze all of this to be able to turn it into an infographic. So we found our idea was to have key terms. So just what words stood out in all of the interviews, and some were characteristics learned, clubs and organizations, opportunities given, and resources available. So essentially, this is what showed up the most, and what a lot of people said is that the resources available for all the students was a very prominent thing, and they could all attest to it, that the students were given a bunch of opportunities and a bunch of resources to really grow and to find help and just whatever they really needed. The clubs and organizations were very big, and we talked to people in the middle school, and they were so excited to talk about all the clubs and organizations they had and the way that they were able to, I guess, run them themselves, and that they were given that opportunity instead of having to run everything through a teacher, is that it was really student-led, which they really enjoyed. And then characteristics learned is that many people could attest to our students being able to advocate for themselves in a way that they didn't see in other districts and other students, and having leadership skills. And
so by the end of analyzing our data, we came up with a list of about 100 words that best described how D38 students were prepared for their future. And so when designing a poster that had to encapture 100 words, we decided that putting those words specifically on the poster was great, but also having a story behind the poster as well. So this is our first draft of our portrait of a graduate. You can see the silhouettes of the students growing up, and then also the world on the left there shows where they are headed and what they're planning to bring into the world. Behind, you can see the 4 separate categories that we have, that we started out with, and then in lighter text behind that, it also describes the list of 100 words that we had initially. So the question that we asked the entire time was, what's next? What is this going towards? And in conversations with both Jess, Rachel, and Mark, we decided that we would create I can statements out of the information that we got. And so this is our core I can statements for us to present to students. This list of I can statements will be changed based off of the different grade levels. And hopefully these students can grow up with these I can statements, so that in their future, when in their careers, when asked how they're a communicator, they know exactly examples because they have grown up with these 4 characteristics in their classroom. Thank you.
Teresa and Tiffany, it's Q&A time if you have any questions. Matt or Ron?
Go ahead, Ron.
I don't.
Go ahead, Teresa, please.
Oh, thank you. I don't have any questions. I just wanted to recognize the amount of work that's gone into your project here. Thank you so much for presenting it tonight.
Thank you.
So I had a question. It might be for Ms. McAllister as well. Number one, thank you, ladies. Wonderful work.
Thank you.
And it's the way you presented it was very absorbable. So it's you're ahead of your time in that regard. Secondly, if this is successful, what does it look like?
So there's a lot of opportunity for us to decide how this can infiltrate itself throughout our K through 12 environment. I think there's a lot of discussion that needs to be had about that, but something that we are brainstorming, which they alluded to in their presentation, was really placing this in the hands of teachers and in classrooms to really model those I can statements. So like I said, there needs to be more discussion around that, but preparing students as they are engaging in their everyday activities in the classroom to recognize when they're advocating for themselves and to maybe even use those words, to recognize when they're taking on the posture of a problem solver. So really to connect the learning in their classrooms and through their experiences in the schools with what those postures might look like, and to name it when we see it.
Ron took my question, but
Yeah, I saw you write it.
just wanted to compliment you ladies. That wonderful presentation. Now, Olivia, did I hear correctly that you're a recent graduate or you're at Palmer Ridge?
I'm a recent graduate.
Okay. So how was your experience at Palmer Ridge? Don't mind me asking.
It was really nice. When I was a freshman, I actually was going to a different high school, and so I switched over from there to Palmer Ridge my sophomore year, and it's been absolutely amazing, even though my sophomore year was cut a little short, and now I'm a senior, and now I'm graduated, and it felt very fast. It still felt like I really had so much support and so many opportunities, which I didn't get and was really looking for in a high school, and so, yes.
Do you feel that your Palmer Ridge high school experience prepared you for life after high school?
Yes, I definitely think it did. I had many opportunities. I partook in Career Start, so I really was able to get that experience, and just, yeah, I definitely do think I'm prepared.
Okay. Knowing what you know now, if you had to give this board 2 or 3 pieces of advice, what would those be? Let me clarify that a little bit. That we could do.
Let me get my notebook out.
that we could do to better serve our students in District 38.
I think something that would be beneficial is hearing student voices a bit more, not necessarily in the way that we did tonight, but kind of like the way you hear the community, is hearing that from students and giving them their opportunities to speak. I think it's very eye-opening. I think since I had the opportunity to talk to so many different people from different grade levels, is hearing what they have to say is really beneficial to knowing more about the school, the way they interact with it, and I think that's important.
You have 2 more for us? Put you on the spot.
It's okay. I think
If you don't have any more,
I don't think I have any more.
Now, Edison, do you have anything you'd like to add to that list?
I mean, I would like to echo what Olivia said, was just giving more opportunities to give advice back. Within my process of interviewing the entire community, I've learned that everyone has a lot to say, and not always negative. There was some great feedback that we both saw from clubs and organizations that we didn't even know about, that were doing amazing things in the kids' lives, and maybe pushing those a little more would be beneficial.
Thank you.
Ms. Upchurch, any comments or questions?
Well, so Mr. Schwartz already asked my question, so thank you, sir. I'd like to say kudos to you young ladies. You guys have done such a great job on this project. And the information that you gleaned is helpful, and also the skill set I no doubt came from this that you'll take forward in life will carry you. So congratulations on a job well done. And my other question would be for probably Ms. McAllister. Do we have the means to look at our graduates post-graduation similar to how District 20 did with their attrition rates and where students are today?
So I'm not entirely sure I'm the best person to ask that question to, but I do know what you're asking for. There is a national clearinghouse, which is what I believe informed the District 20 presentation that you're speaking of, as far as where students, go after they graduate and how many of them go to which institution and what are the top, 5 or 10 institutions. We do have access to that, and I know that previously we have assembled a group of people to look at that data together. So it would just be a matter, kind of with all of the transition, to determine who has that access now, and then to compile a presentation and to really look at it. But I know it's an important piece of information and data to look at to help us to inform our decisions here.
And I would just echo, Jess answered that very well. Ms. Upchurch, we're happy to dive into more of that as part of a mid-year or at whatever point it makes sense to deep data dive aspect of what those numbers represent and all of those components. So happy to go into more of that detail at the point that serves this board.
Any other comments?
I have one other question.
Please.
For Olivia, hopefully. In the spirit of student voices. So one of the things as you get older, you realize you learn more from the bad stuff than the good. And in the spirit of that, is there anything that if you look back, whether it was you or your peers, your friends, that the system could have done a little bit better or a little bit differently to have a nice impact on you or your peers? You want to email me later when we're not in public?
No. I think something that was not present when I was younger, but I did find that I had a lot of in high school, was just people and staff and teachers being there. I didn't have that much when I was growing up, and I think it would have been helpful to be able to understand a lot of the things that I was going through that I really didn't understand, but no one was willing to help me or no one really noticed. Whereas definitely in high school, I've definitely felt like I've had that, and that I've had people who are there for me and that notice these things, and that the staff has always been really willing to help me with everything, and that's been a nice thing that I've been able to see change since I was younger. And now that I'm older.
That means she likes your answer.
Okay.
Okay, so that's great feedback. Thank you.
Let me just say that this is what we're talking about. This is amazing. You two are pioneers, and I'm assuming you did this alone, or did you have a team with you, or?
It was the two of us.
Yeah.
Well, great job. You're pioneers. The portrait of a graduate, is that what we're calling this? This seems to me to be like the intro to every community engagement session we have. It's every child, every day. And what a beautiful presentation, and how thoughtful and how much work you put into it. And the results are remarkable.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is what we're talking about. This is love, right? This is learning and learning to love yourselves, to love others, to recognize the value in everyone. And what a beautiful job you've done. And Dr. Summers, I hope that this work that has been accomplished, you guys are like the standard bearers here, right? And I hope that this standard that they've helped establish lasts a long time, because you've done an excellent job. So thank you both very much. And Jessica, you too.
Mr. Taylor, if I may, not to add more to that, you're a hard act to follow tonight, but I do have 2 certificates in appreciation and recognition. So I'm just going to read to you both what they say, and then I'm going to add just a quick line here. So Lewis Palmer School District 38 recognizes Addison Hayworth as well as Olivia Jones, and we appreciate your contribution to the Lewis Palmer School District community through both of your work on the Portrait of a Graduate project. This is dated and signed. It's very official. But I think the other thing I would encourage you to do, as I am reading through not only the core competencies of communicator, empowered individual, problem solver, community member, but really zooming in on those I can statements. For example, I won't read them all, but I can advocate, I can articulate, I can authenticate, and I can actuate. And it goes on and on and on. But I hope that in this process, what you are realizing is that absolutely what you're talking about doing is what you already have done, which is tremendous to be celebrated and appreciated. And so, again, just to echo all these wonderful comments, thank you both for all of your efforts. And we would invite you up to get your certificate as well as a handshake.
Now that we have the important stuff out of the way, we'll move on to agenda item C2, which is consider approve revisions to policies JFBA and JFBB. Dr. Summers?
So if you recall, we spent some time at our last work session going into some additional revision to what was presented to you as a first reading in December. Tonight we are prepared to process through any other questions or thoughts that you all may have. So Mr. Frampton is here to address those, but we're presenting to you what we believe is the adjustments that we're confident in at this point with both the JFBA, JFBB.
So let me start by making a recommendation to approve the revisions to policy JFBA, intra-district choice open enrollment, and policy JFBB, inter-district choice open enrollment as presented.
Mr. Taylor, I would second your motion to adopt the aforementioned policies.
Thank you. Comments and questions from the board? I'll just call on you. Mr. Clausen.
Aye.
No, not to vote. Comments or questions? None?
Yeah, I don't have anything.
Okay. Ron, Mr. Sorts?
Also nothing, thank you.
Ms. Upchurch?
No, sir, I do not have any comments or questions.
Ms. Phillips?
I just appreciate Mr. Frampton's revisions, and I think it all looks great.
Ms. Wood, would you call the vote?
Mr. Clausen?
Aye.
Ms. Phillips?
Aye.
Mr. Schwartz?
Aye.
Mr. Taylor?
Aye.
Ms. Upchurch?
Aye.
Thank you. Our next agenda item is C3, policy update, first reading of revisions to policy IKF. Dr. Summers.
Yes, so again, we spent some time at the last work session on this particular policy, but we're happy to process through any additional comments at this time. Ms. Wetstein has spent a good deal of time putting forth these recommendations, so we're happy to address any of those. Anything you want to share, Ms. Wetstein, on that?
No, I just don't know how to bring it up on the screen if we need to do that.
Mr. or Miss Wood can help us with that. That still looks like.
Maybe I don't have my KF up here.
You're okay, Vicki.
I don't have my KF up here.
Go for it. Do you guys need it up on your screen, or?
I can
we
speak to the most significant change.
Go for it.
And it is available in board docs to view. For the most part, the changes that are being proposed are for clarification and are not changing the content of the policy, with the exception of a change in the requirement for a semester of technology coursework. We are still recommending that our students, as you heard from our interns tonight, are prepared for their future, including having technology skills, but we are proposing that we do not require them to take a course, as technology is really embedded in all that we do in our schools today. Happy to answer questions that you may have.
Any questions from the board?
I have some questions.
Ms. Upchurch.
Yes, sir. So when on the first part of it, trying to pull it up again. I'm sorry. I apologize. I just lost it. Where the accumulation of high school credits towards graduation begins on the first day of a student's 9th grade year. Just totally out of curiosity, is there ever an opportunity for a 7th or 8th grader who's excelled to earn a high school credit?
That is an opportunity that some districts do consider. Our current practice is that we do not begin the accumulation of credits until 9th grade. That is certainly something that we could consider in the future.
I honestly, just out of curiosity, I would like to explore and learn more about that. Not that it affects the vote in February on this, but that it brought up a curiosity, and I wondered is there anything we can do to stand out as a district or serve our students better if that is or is not in this policy? So just something I'd like to visit at a later time to learn more about.
I appreciate that question, and that was a question that I actually asked our counselors and school leaders as we were working together on these recommended revisions. What I learned through that process is that our community values 4 years of high school, and some districts who do allow students to begin accumulating credits in middle school oftentimes have students graduating early. So that would be a consideration for the future if we looked at that option.
Would it be reasonable to have a pros and cons look at this issue at our upcoming work session? Just so that there's better clarity of why or why not?
We certainly can work to provide that. As just a quick reference, that is a little bit of a short turnaround, so I don't want to shortchange that list in light of a meeting that's a week from tomorrow.
And if that's the issue, then we could defer the second reading until March. Is it urgent that it gets approved?
I would suggest that we approve the change in technology credit, as we do have students preparing to graduate this year, and we certainly want to set them up for success in having those requirements met.
And we can amend it if we need to down the road. So, Ms.
Certainly.
Upchurch, is that okay with you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I don't want to rush. I'd rather do it thoroughly, so there's a good, so I March or whenever it makes sense to the district. But I think an understanding would be worthwhile. And then if we need to, we can always make an amendment.
Happy to.
Any other questions or comments on this first reading? Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Wait, I have one.
Oh,
wait,
sorry.
sorry, I have one more question about the same one. On the correspondence distance learning courses, can you explain that part of it, please?
Yes. So this is not new content. We just moved the information in the policy for clarity's sake, but this has been our practice. We do have specific courses and partnerships with universities that are approved by the district through memorandums of understanding, and so this is just getting to that we do offer specific opportunities for students, and we take a look at those as a district and communicate through the course handbook at the high school as to what opportunities there are for students to take advantage of those. I could provide you specifics at the upcoming meeting as far as what all of those partnerships are.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments before we move on? Hearing none, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Our next agenda item is C4, Financial Planning and Analysis. We're going to consider approve adjustments to the 21-22 district budget.
So I can just welcome and tee up Ms. Overton here. So I think there's quite a bit in your board packet around this item. We're happy to go through questions that you have through the process. I think it might be best, do we want to start with enrollment? How do you want to do this? Because there's enrollment, and then there's our monthly reports, and then there's our budget adjustment presentation. So Mr. Taylor, do you have a preference on how we want to? Okay.
I didn't really prepare any comments specifically about enrollment, but this is the latest count that Jim Taylor has provided to the district. We also did receive another rendition of our PPOR from CDE in January, reflecting our updated counts. So you'll see in the budget adjustments when we get there, the new PPOR revenue based on the October counts that have been turned into CDE.
The only other thing I'd like to mention related to enrollment specifically is that we do have an updated and accurate accounting of how many students were choiced in and out this year. All of that information is available via our website now. You do see the change in our typical enrollment reporting methodology from where we were in comparison to October count. And so that change from the 2021 October student count to today, or at least beginning of this month, is also reflected on this report. So just a lot of updates and information in that area.
Well, you mentioned that it was on there now. It's just this current rendition is there because we've got 10 years history, right, of opt-ins, opt-outs.
Correct. So it's, yes, if sorry if I misstated, that is to now include this most recent school year in addition to the historical data that you referenced.
Very good, very good. Is that easily found by people?
I think it is if you know what you're looking for. So one feature that might be helpful for anyone that is looking is just to type in the search bar enrollment. And so not only will you have the information about how to enroll, but you'll see the data and everything that we're talking about as well.
It's a really good history of choice ins, choice outs that goes back 10 or 11 years now.
And as Ms. Wood just is so kindly showing me here, there's also an Apple icon that if you hover at the lower end of the screen, you can click on. That takes you also to the enrollment features.
Awesome.
So I guess monthly reports.
Yeah, so the December monthly reports are included in the board packet. I did take those into the budget to actuals for December so that we could get an idea of how our spend looks at this halfway point of the year. And everything did look to be on schedule. Things are hovering right up or below 50%, as we would expect at this point in the year for December financials. Are there any specific questions on the December reports?
My question is there anything else that we need to be aware of?
I can tell you that we're a bit behind in requesting our grant funds, so we should see an influx of that either in February or March, where we've gone back and done some requests for funds on some of the grants. So our revenue on grants is a little bit behind.
Any other comments or questions on the monthly reports?
One more thing, I did add the report that you're seeing here is the budget to actuals for just general fund broken out by program. Hopefully this can just lend some more insight to our conversations around where we are with budget to actuals. Previous report, budget to actuals, is all funds and it's just one lump sum for each fund. So this just goes into a little bit more detail for general fund.
Thank you. Now, as we go to the budget adjustments, you got a number of files out here, but the one I like the most, I think, is called the budget adjustment presentation. Is
The PowerPoint?
Is that the one that I'm looking at? Is that the same?
The PowerPoint that I'm going to walk through with you is basically highlighting parts of the budget adjustment document that we'll be asking for approval on tonight.
Yeah, that's the one I was referencing.
Mr. Taylor, pardon the interruption. One quick note, and Ms. Wood is updating this as we speak. There is actually a table that will summarize the adjustments as they're being presented and shared with you through this presentation. That table is the summary doc. For some reason that just went missing, but we are updating it as we speak. So it will be an Excel table, yes, sir. It's being added.
It's there now, a PDF of an Excel table. It was there all weekend. Something happened today.
The presentation, I think, as Ms. Overton will walk through this, goes into the context, the table.
About this document.
Yep. It just for a minute did not appear in the packet.
Okay.
But it is now there again.
Okay.
Apologize for that confusion. But Ms. Overton, without further ado, I think we're happy to walk through the presentation with you all.
Yes, and thank you. I'm really excited to be able to present this tonight. Just a quick overview. I'll be looking at the grant fund with you first to give you a broad perspective of where we stand with grant funding. Then we'll look at general fund, our mid-year compensation proposal, and I'll finish up with a quick analysis of our fund balance and our cash flow. So as you know, we have received quite a substantial amount of grant revenue over and above what we had in the adopted budget. So this first slide just represents the changes to the revenue in the grant fund. Primarily, you'll see the ESSER 3 budget there for 1.3. That is just a portion of our ESSER 3 award. It's the first year spend, so for 21-22, that is what we have submitted to CDE for our budget for this current school year. Then we also list there the additional funding that Dr. Summers mentioned earlier from our new literacy grant. First year for that is $340,000, and then that technology grant, which comes to approximately $532,000 in additional grant funding. The next slide then.
Sorry, before we leave those are
Yep.
one-time grants except for the ESSER 3, which is over years, right? But this is one time for this year only.
The literacy grant goes more than 1 year. The amount that you see there is for the first year. Amber? Do you know?
It's a 4-year grant. This will be the first year, and we will get our award letter for upcoming years in the future. But we are anticipating somewhere around $750,000 total.
And that's designated for curriculum? That's focused on literacy, I'm assuming, or I'm
Curriculum, training, some staffing in relationship to some coach position, and some other purchase of materials and resources in our effort to apply interventions that meet student needs.
And yet,
I'm sorry,
yeah.
the new, go, maybe you're gonna.
I was just going to say then the technology grant, as far as I know, is just this one time for this year so far. ESSER $3, we have that budgeted out for 2 years. So what you see on this table is just for this current year.
About the same next year? Then?
Yeah, it's a little bit less, but approximately half.
About the same. Okay, thank you.
So then the next slide is just showing the adjustments to the spend side of the grant. The first slide was the revenue changes. So our grant revenues and our expenditures need to balance to zero. So this is a representation of how those ESSER dollars and the technology and literacy grant dollars have been budgeted for. So this just breaks it down between salaries, benefits, purchase services, supplies, et cetera. So those would be the proposed budget adjustments in the grant fund. I'd like to mention too that this increased grant funding, it does add new supports for students, but it also relieves the general fund to some degree because some general fund expenditures will be transferred to the grant.
Do we know how much?
I don't have that particularly quantified, and that is because we are still in the planning stages. The budget has been submitted, but as we start to really hone in on how those dollars are going to be spent, it will inform better which of those were already budgeted for in general fund. I do have an approximation on the next slide, or in the next few slides, where you'll see I took maybe half of that might relieve the general fund budget.
Before you go on, though, I'd like to have a better understanding of the negative 438,000 to
Sure. So I believe in the original adopted budget, the ESSER 2 funds, which you'll see, I'm going to just back up a slide. ESSER 2, we had $1 million revenue stream from ESSER 2 in the adopted budget, and I believe in the adopted budget it was all put to salary and benefits. So this really just adjusts it to what we're really thinking where we're really thinking we're spending the dollars. So it decreased the amount for salaries.
of the same dollars. Is that accurate?
I don't think that the original budget broke out the ESSER dollars. The ESSER 2 budget wasn't broken out in the budget. So it was all in one lump sum, and it was put to the salary line. So there wasn't really a lot of itemization to it, I guess.
Which, in part, answers the next question, and that is, how could benefits go up 159,000 if salaries went down? And what you just answered that question.
Right. Yeah. So this really just kind of adjusted it to how we are actually thinking it will be spent out.
I understand. Thank you.
Okay, so moving on to general fund. This first slide shows the increase to PPOR based on our adjusted pupil count, which was an increase of $1.8 million to PPOR. And then there are a couple of slight adjustments to our categorical and some revenue there for the charter school.
Question on that? Do we have any estimate, I should say, if the adjusted or increased pupil count is sustainable?
So one of the things we have to remember in that 1.8 is a sizable number of students were increased at Monument Academy and not necessarily district operated schools. So while that is the overall bump, and I think we have a number in that charter school adjustment as well. So Ms. Overton, anything else you'd add to that?
Yeah, as far as the sustainability of the numbers, I think we need to revisit the demographic report that was provided by our demographers and do some analysis around that. There's a lot of variables there.
Thank you.
So,
Can I ask a clarification question?
Of course.
So I just, in reading the three columns across adopted budget, adjustments, and flexible budget, Kitty, can you just explain, is flexible budget reflective of the budget as of today? Is that what's meant by that?
yes, that would be the proposed budget adjustments, so that the flexible budget column would be our final budget for the year.
And is there a time frame? Is that this month or this quarter?
Tonight.
Tonight, as of today?
Yes, everything that is presented this evening is where we are at as of mid-year, and we need you to approve what we're presenting to you as this mid-year adjustment. We can't go any further than the end of January, in other words.
Great, thank you. I just wanted to clarify. Thanks.
Sure.
Okay, any other questions on the revenue piece of this equation? All right, so next I'm going to speak to part of that PPOR. We are required to pass that through to Monument Academy based on their enrollment. So you will see both the MLO and the charter allocation adjustments to reflect their pupil count. That takes 1.1 back out of general fund. But we can also make some adjustments to the positive in general fund. After the audit, we were able to see that beginning fund balances for the three funds listed there, food service, transportation, capital reserve, we actually ended the year with fund balances, whereas in the adopted budget, we predicted 0 fund balance. What that means is we don't have to transfer as much fund from general fund into these three funds, which frees those dollars up for reallocation. Is there any questions or clarification
Yeah, just
needed
one
on that?
question, and it's really one also of recollection. Were we originally considering pulling money out of reserves to cover the fiscal year? And if so, does this have an impact on it?
Pulling reserves out of, could you?
Yeah, were we considering pulling money out of the savings for operating dollars?
We actually, as part of the adopted budget, there was a board resolution to spend down fund balance in general fund. A big portion of that went to capital reserve to firm up the projects that are funded in capital reserve this year, including the Schneider Electric project and some geothermal work.
Yeah.
That's all we approved, correct?
Yes, and if you recall, and it goes back a little ways, May, June timeframe, we were intentional in our draft of the original budget not to rely on reserve dollars for general operating expenses. So we wanted to stay in the black with what we were anticipating were our funds from the state. In reference to the cap reserve, which has already been brought up, that was the one exception to that plan.
Okay. Thank you.
So, and there is a line on here, beginning fund balance. So that $14 million number was the projected beginning fund balance for budget year 21-22. Audited numbers brought beginning fund balance in below that at $13.8 million. So the net effect of increased PPOR, less transfer from general fund to food service, transportation, and cap reserve, and the additional allocation, along with that change in beginning fund balance, nets us additional resources of $1.1 million in the general fund. Okay, next slide. Here's where we represent potential use of that 1.1 additional resource in general fund. Our proposal includes $935,000 in salaries, along with benefits related to that additional pay. I do want to point out in yellow the projected ending fund balance. Without considering the additional grant revenue, our resources less expenditures net our predicted fund balance at 11.3, which is just barely off of what was in the adopted budget. And then if we consider some relief to the general fund because of the grant funding, that will actually increase the ending fund balance, or the projected ending fund balance for this fiscal year. Lots of puzzled looks. Okay.
I just want to attempt to summarize.
Go for it.
We started the year with about $13 million in change. We resolved to take some money out of the savings to fund some capital items. We should be able to do a proposed compensation action, should we choose to do it, and still end up with a little bit more money than we started with the exception of the money we chose to take out of the savings for some capital items. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Absolutely correct.
And when
Very
the day comes that we have a number for our savings account, I won't have to explain this, right?
We have a few more slides for you that I think you'll enjoy.
Great.
We don't.
I have a free Reese's bar over here if it's good.
Okay, we're going to enter the expenditure side. So the salaries and benefits, this is our compensation proposal. Certified staff, we propose a salary schedule adjustment, ongoing compensation increase. It adds an average of approximately $1,400 per person per year for our certified staff to their annual salary. This would be retroactive to August of 2021, the start of this fiscal year. It restores a step that was lost during salary freezes last fiscal year, and the approximate cost, including para and Medicare, is $650,000. For classified staff, salary schedule adjustment, this is an ongoing increase, retroactive to July or August. This would depend on the individual employee and when their start date is. And the approximate cost, including para and Medicare, is approximately $423,000. And then, not to be left out, our administrative staff, we propose a one-time compensation action of $1,500 each to be paid out at the end of the fiscal year. The approximate cost, including para and Medicare, of $75,000. So that makes up the total listed here of $1.148 in the proposed budget adjustment. Now, just to address the fund balance question and the savings question.
Before we leave the compensation adjustments, this does not address any of the differences in our schedules as compared to other school districts in our area.
That's correct.
Accurate? This is just a
This is not.
This is not a directed, this is just a general
Yeah.
across the board increase, and you've characterized it as a replacement of a freeze that occurred at the pandemic, the beginning of the pandemic, correct?
That's absolutely correct. So if I can add a couple more lines to that. We still intend to, through our analyses and ongoing calculations, work toward a proposal for a more longer-term sustainable and competitive compensation plan moving forward. What this represents is, through our analysis of what we have available to us within this fiscal year and predicting out our ability to maintain that ongoing allocation, is about restoring that step and getting us at least a step along the line. So it does actually translate to a step in the salary schedule for our licensed and our classified employees. Yep.
Totally agree.
Yep.
Totally understand, but the point is still the same.
Yes.
We're restoring the freeze from the beginning of the COVID that
That's
we
correct.
had to do because we had no clue if we had any money,
That's
right?
correct.
So we've just restored something, and at the same time, this doesn't address any kind of compensation adjustments that would be designed to make us compatible or comparable with surrounding school districts. That's not in the equation here, correct?
We are speaking the same language.
Okay.
Ms. Upchurch, did you have something?
Yes. Just what is it? This is the best we can do. That's what I want to know.
Within the context of this year's budget, it's
Yes, sir.
the fiscally responsible and responsive approach that we are taking. If you're asking me if it's the best, it's given what we have, yes. I think that's probably the best way to say it.
Thank you.
Ron?
So one more question. Actually, one comment and then a question. This is wonderful work. It's well-deserved. It's been earned by our team, by the results they've produced. Having said that, in the spirit of protecting the taxpayers, does migrating into this accelerated compensation, albeit relatively small, expose us in future years if our student count goes down?
You had me up until that last clause, if our student count goes down. Everything is relative to what our enrollment actually is. So is it asking more of our taxpayers? No, because it's not asking an increase. Does it have the potential to have to adjust based on numbers that continue? If they were to go down, which we do not anticipate, then that would be obviously a conversation we would need to have around what's the impact and where are we finding those reductions.
So ultimately, if we look at this as a percent of the total budget, it's roughly 2%. And
yes.
So the exposure, not including advances in healthcare and para, is 2%, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
And Ron, let me comment on that as well. I mean, if the head count, the student count went down, we'd probably not have the same need for the same number of teachers that we have. So there's a corresponding,
Yeah, I just want us to go into these decisions with our eyes wide open. We understand the potential exposure, and we move forward with the right thing to do.
We appreciate that due diligence.
Any other questions on compensation before we move on?
Just a few more slides here, and this is just to lend some credence to that, maybe that unknown factor. So I took a look at the fund balance over the past 5 to 6 years and predicted the 2022 ending fund balance based on the analysis you saw earlier. Just to graph that out to see what our fund balance has been doing, and it does show some growth in fund balance, meaning we're not spending all that we have available. Some of that we can't spend because it's restricted. So this next slide, it shows our unrestricted fund balance as a percentage of general fund expenditures. So this is board policy that says the board's goal is to have unrestricted fund balance at the level of 16.7% of our general fund expenditures, which represents about 3 months worth of operating expenditures. So you can see here the baseline of 16.7 in blue, and where we've landed in past years and where we predict to end in 2022. So as that fund balance has grown over the last 5 to 6 years, one reference from that could be that we have the funds available to do more with compensation and still be at the required level of unrestricted fund balance at the end of the year. And then because we often have questions about cash flow as it relates to fund balance, I just wanted to put these up as a reminder. Our cash balance starts out high at the beginning of the fiscal year, and we start to draw that down We are getting in our state revenues as every month, beginning in July and going through the end of the year, but our tax revenues don't really start to flow into the district until February, March. And so that's when you'll see this increase in our cash. This is last year's cash flow graphed out, and then the next slide shows July through December, which is definitely following that pattern. So just kind of a graphical depiction of where we are with cash flow, and we'll expect to start seeing those tax revenues come in February and March. Questions?
So if we map the average fund balance across the year, it would be in excess of $10 million. Is that correct?
If we included for the entire year, is that
If
what
we
you're
took all the money we had in the bank
Mhm.
and we averaged it across the fund balance across the year, it would be a minimum of $10 million.
That's probably about right.
Okay, thank you.
So, help me understand, just looking at yours, I'm not sure what slides there. Go back to the fund balance analysis. There's 2 slides there. And let's look at the one that has the solid line through it.
Oh, okay.
That one, yeah. So, you went through the budget adjustments, and we have about almost over 2 million of ESSER funds in the budget, right?
True, this is just general fund that you're seeing here, though.
I'm sorry?
This depiction, this graph is just general fund. It doesn't have grant fund included.
Well, so the ESSER funds are not included in this graph at all.
That is correct.
That's helpful to understand that. So the decrease that we're looking at is a result of the capital expenditures that we approved, which was twofold. One was the Schneider Electric contract, and that was, do you recall how much that was?
About $3 million overall with the adjustment.
That included the funding, though, right?
Well, the funding that we had the loan for was closer to
Oh, $7 million.
7.
And the total was around 9 something, right?
Correct.
So it was a couple million.
And the use of fund balance that was approved was 3.4 million.
But
in
I
last
think,
year's budget. Yeah.
yeah, I don't want to belabor the issue, but I think what we approved to come out of the general fund or the savings account was about just under 2 million. And then, I mean, we had, there's other sources.
A few
of
other
funds.
things.
Yeah, I mean,
There was
So we
an
also-
accounting of Palmer Ridge High School geothermal project. There
well,
was
that was the next one I wanted to bring up.
okay.
So then the second issue was the geothermal project at Palmer Ridge. And I can't never forget that I was, just full of bad news when that was presented to us, because we're only scratching the surface of what that ultimate cost is going to be. And we haven't yet seen the analysis of what that ultimate cost is going to be. But in that first year that is in this budget, was it close to $1 million, or do you recall what that number is?
It was around $1 million.
Around $1 million. And I don't suppose you have any update on what the overall cost is going to be over
We
time.
actually are in a position to share that analysis at the upcoming work session, February 1st. And that will be a real detailed update at that point.
Okay, so that's the whole caveat that I was trying to get here. You want us to approve the budget, and it takes us right down really close to the board-approved savings account. And I like that, because I'd like to approve the budget as you've presented it. But I want to do it with my eyes open, as Ron so well articulated, that there's still a liability associated with the Palmer Ridge geothermal project that has to come from somewhere. And what I'm going to assume, because I don't know and I haven't heard you stated it. So rather than me assuming, where do you anticipate future funding coming from for the completion of the Palmer Ridge project?
If we go back to cap reserve line, kitty slide 6, we adjusted that budget by about 300,000. My understanding is there's still that still leaves around about a 600. So we do have uncommitted reserve dollars built into cap reserve that we think would satisfy a good portion of that Palmer Ridge project. The other thing I would presume as we work through that update and also work into next year's budget is that we'll have, with the offset of some of those one-time dollars from ESSER and some other areas, the ability to offset our general fund so that it's not eating more into reserve in order to fund that geothermal project.
And I appreciate that explanation, and I just want to remind us all that 4 years ago, our district administration was pushing a $90 million bond, and there was, as I recall, 25 or 30 million in deferred maintenance across the district that was going to be included in that. So you've explained one project, which is the Palmer Ridge geothermal project, but don't we still have somewhere around 20 to 30 million in deferred maintenance?
Depending on how you interpret a lot of the work that was done in that overarching facilities master plan,
and
we're always going to have deferred maintenance. I think you know that.
And
so,
I believe it was presented in such a way to try and pass a very large bond. So I don't know, but I guess the question I'm really getting to, or the suggestion might be, we should look at the Palmer Ridge project somehow in the context of all deferred maintenance. Now, I know it's a unique situation because it's a repair and maintenance,
very much
but
so.
I would like us to look at it in the context of what our deferred maintenance is, because as you know, in our budget, what is the percentage that we're spending on deferred maintenance?
I don't have that exact percentage off the top of my head, but
is it fair to say it's fairly
low? It would certainly be a question for the budgeting process for 22-23 as we go into that budget planning year to determine how much of the budget we do need to carve out a general fund to go to those.
Fair enough. And that just further supports the concept of a comprehensive strategic plan that looks at the big picture and all the parts, so that when we're being asked to approve specific elements, we understand the impact on the big picture. I hope that makes sense to you all.
It absolutely does. And I think in past experience, typically there's a certain amount of the general fund that goes towards these capital reserve projects in a given year, in a given budget year. It's a matter of questioning how much that should be, how much is needed, how much we can afford.
And how much is urgent, because we've been presented with situations that, you know, a cooler just quit working.
Right, having a contingency
and so,
budget there is
you know,
helpful.
part of that deferred maintenance is trying to predict obsolescence of equipment so we're not dealing with emergencies all the time, if that's possible. Any other questions or comments from the board?
Just one thing as it relates to the Palmer Ridge geothermal scenario, and I may have missed a piece of progress. If I have, I apologize. When we last spoke about it, we were going to ensure before we invested a significant amount of money into it that investment is in fact the best, the best long-term alternative on behalf of the district, the students, and the taxpayers.
what you will hear at the February 1st work session, I believe, will demonstrate that, as well as the projected and entire scope of where we're at and where we need to be with that project upon completion.
Thank you.
Tiffany or Teresa, any other questions or comments?
No questions, just a comment to thank those who crafted and wrote and submitted the grant applications.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
I'd like to make a motion to accept. Oh, am I in the right one? Hold on one second. Here we go. To accept the adjustments to the 21-22 district budget as presented.
Second.
Any comments or questions beyond what we've done? Hearing none. Ms. Wood?
Aye.
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 Thank you very much. The next agenda item is agenda item C5. Consider approve the 2021 financial audit annual comprehensive financial report.
So if I may, as Ms. Overton works to get in touch with our auditor, who she's going to dial in here, we are happy to address any questions that the board has and make sure that we have
Let me do
this presentation.
Let me do the formality while we're waiting on him.
Sounds great.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the district audit and annual comprehensive financial report for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021 as presented, and to direct Ms. Overton to submit the report to the state auditor's office and other entities as required by statute or agreement.
I'll second that motion.
I'll put you on speaker.
Any comments or questions? And
I don't
we'll
have any questions, Mr. Taylor.
No, thank you.
and we'll wait for the auditor to be online here.
He's available now.
Kitty, you may want to hold that directly up just so we can hear him. John Paul, how you doing?
Oh, hold on. Can you hear us, John Paul?
Yes.
There we go.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Teresa or Tiffany, any questions or comments before I ask a couple?
I don't have any questions or comments. Thank you. I don't either. Thank you.
Okay. So, John Paul, thank you very much for dialing in. The issue that I would like you to describe is twofold. And first, I want to talk about the difference between a fair market lease accounting and a capital lease accounting. And I believe that's the subject of what your firm has deemed a material weakness in our internal controls over financial reporting. So if you could just start by describing the difference in those two accounting approaches and why it resulted in your assessment that there's a material weakness in our internal controls.
Sure. So that one, which is on PDF page 97, is the first item within the financial statement findings. So that within governmental accounting standards, governments on that current focus set of financial statements, whenever they enter into a capital lease, and starting next year, any lease will fall under this category with a change in the guidance. But for right now, any capital lease that's entered into, the government is required to present both a lease expenditure for the present value of that lease, as well as an other financing source for the present value of the capital lease. So those two amounts offset each other entirely. So you're basically just grossing up this amount coming in as well as this amount that would be going out. Granted, none of that actually has a financial impact because you're not spending any of the cash, but it is required to be presented that way for financial reporting. So there was a bus lease with, I believe, 5 school buses that the district took possession, entered into this capital lease, and therefore should have reported the present value of that capital lease as both a capital expenditure and another financing source during the year. That was not done, and then it was adjusted as part of the audit. So that's where that finding is coming from.
John Paul, if I could restate what I just heard, so that I understand it better, that would be that we entered into a lease for 5 buses, and we expensed the lease payments as lease payments, and your firm came in and said, you actually need to gross up the acquisition of those buses to their cost or fair market value at the time of the transaction, and then use the lease as a financing instrument and gross it up and expense some interest and some repayment of the capital. So essentially what happened is our district leased it as if it was a fair market type lease, and your firm came in and said, no, that needs to be a capital lease. Is that essentially the difference?
Sure. So if it was an operating lease, you would, like you said, just show the payments as they become due. But with a capital lease, you do have that requirement to show it as if it was a financing transaction where you're receiving all of the money, turning around, spending the money to purchase those buses, and then making the principal and interest payments on the amount that was loaned. So yes, I believe we're saying the same thing.
Okay, perfect. So my fellow board members, do you have any questions or comments about the material weakness that we've described?
I do.
Please.
Who holds title to the buses?
I believe we have the title to the buses. Yeah.
Well, that would indicate it's a capital lease.
Yeah.
Which you're agreeing with the auditors then?
I am in this scenario.
Okay. Tiffany or Teresa, any questions or comments on this matter?
I don't have any questions or comments. Thank you.
Okay, so just
I don't have any questions or comments either. I'm still soaking it all in.
okay,
I
so
understand it.
generally speaking, I think we understand that material weakness. So John Paul, the next thing what I'd like you to describe is, can you describe what is a material weakness as it's used in classifying a deficiency you've found in the internal controls over financial reporting? And then, likewise, there's another 3 or 4 significant deficiencies that were identified. Could you define what is a material weakness versus a significant deficiency so that we understand the differences between those classifications?
Sure, absolutely. So the difference between them, the material weakness is the more significant of the two. So there's really there's 2 types of deficiencies that would be reported within the financials. There's the material weakness, which is the more significant, and then the significant deficiency, which is, despite having significant in the name, the less significant of the 2. Any findings or deficiencies that are less than those would then be reported within the management letter, which is the separate document that was also provided along with the financial statements. So the material weakness, there's a number of factors that can go into defining whether something is a material weakness or a significant deficiency. In general, a material weakness is something that, if not corrected, would materially misstate the financial statements. And so based on the dollar amount being over $500,000 within this first item, it was determined that that was going to be a material weakness, basically based on that dollar amount. In other situations, that can also be other qualitative factors that may increase the severity or significance of deficiency, even though it may not have the same significance dollar amount wise.
Very good. So So, in summary, the material weakness is a classification that you use when there's a material impact on the financial reports.
Correct.
Okay. When you look at the last 3 or 4 years or 5 years of audits, and I wish I'd have given you some time to prep, but what has our history been in terms of how many significant deficiencies and or how many material weaknesses have we seen over the last 5 years?
Sure. So there haven't been too many over the last couple of years, but one thing that I would like to also mention is that in addition to the quantitative factors, there's also, like I said, the qualitative factors. And so part of our consideration of the material weakness and significant deficiencies this year is the fact that there have been adjustments posted as part of the audit process that in previous years were considered to be lesser due to qualitative factors surrounding those adjustments, but the continued presence of those and really the last couple of years increasing almost every year for the last 4 years or so. Every year it seems like there's another audit adjustment or 2 audit adjustments each year, and so kind of that trajectory from previous years is one of the qualitative factors that resulted in these items being considered a material weakness and significant deficiencies in this year compared to previous years where we had more of these types of items included on the management letter.
Thank you. And to that end, the fact that we've gone from a CFO, help me on my timing here, but I think 3 years ago we had a CFO that had been here for 12 years. And then 2 years ago we had a new CFO. Last year we had a new CFO. And now this year we have a new CFO. So this turnover of leadership is somewhat a weakness in our internal control process. Is that a valid assumption on my part?
I would say from my perspective, that's likely the root cause behind all of these items.
Very good.
So losing some of that knowledge each year has led to, like you're saying, deficiencies in the process.
And so does any of the other board members have any comments or questions about this? I have a recommendation and a request that I'd like to do, but I want to make sure everybody's had their chance to. Okay. So thank you, John Paul. That was helpful for us to understand. What I would like to ask Dr. Summers is that we have an upcoming work session where we can really focus in on the internal controls over financial reporting to stem the tide. Now, it could be just time is going to take care of it, but I think we kind of owe it to the public to say, this is how we're going to mitigate the risk associated with missing entries, not making entries, or misclassifying entries going forward.
We'd be more than happy to spend some time with the board and share that information with the public. And I know with Ms. Overton's leadership as well as a new team, we are poised to take this information and to act upon it and make the corrections that we need to moving forward.
Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, my question for John Paul really is a follow-on to Mr. Taylor's with respect to risk. So these potential discrepancies and or deficiencies, do they have any material impact on the district's credit rating?
John Paul, were you able to hear that question?
I wasn't.
Go ahead.
Mr. Schwartz would like to know if these findings would have any impact on the district's credit rating.
That would be up to the agency agency reviewing and determining the credit rating, though most of the time we don't see that there is a direct correlation between the two, though that's not to say that it couldn't.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none.
I
Ms.
have
Wood?
one
Oh, sorry.
comment.
Go ahead, Tiffany.
I appreciate the opportunity to have these planned and conversations about this.
Thank you. Ms. Wood?
Aye.
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 Thank you, Kitty.
We're done with John Paul, right? Thank you, John Paul.
Yes. Thank you, John Paul.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
You too. Bye.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Comments or questions?
Mr. Taylor, I do have a question. So does Teresa. Go ahead, Tiffany. Okay. I was actually going to ask that we pull out the approval for the course contest. I just had a question about it as it relates to it.
I'm sorry. We get an echo here, so while Tiffany's speaking, Teresa, can you mute? And then conversely, when Teresa speaks, can you mute Tiffany? So Tiffany, go first.
So my question was on the course approvals. I don't have a problem with voting yes on the course approvals. I actually just have a question on process. When I look at these, and it shows the proposed content, curriculum content, and I question, when does the board, or what is the process for when the board and the community is involved in curriculum content when we're approving a new curriculum or a new course? And is there an opportunity is the opportunity the same to look at the curriculum for these types of classes versus when we do our reviews?
So, Ms. Upchurch, let me do the best I can to, I think, answer that. So when you're being asked to approve curriculum, we have a very extensive process by which we work through recommendations, the opportunity for community review, et cetera. So that is something we are actually also prepared to share with you all in more detail as we go into the February 1st work session. When it comes to a new course approval, in many situations, and I can just use tonight's approvals as an example, we are making a shift to the way that class is typically coded within Infinite Campus. So it doesn't necessarily change the material or the curriculum, it's just it's like semantics in terms of what we're calling that class, perhaps the length of that class. So the review is not necessarily as extensive. However, we do make sure that we work closely with our school counselors, our principals, teachers, whoever may be involved prior to putting that course approval in front of you. Did that help answer that, Ms. Upchurch?
Yes, that answers the question, but it also begs a question, for me anyway, as one board member, on when we're looking at our different curriculums for our different courses, is there that desire, that opportunity to be as collaborative and inclusive in that process? And so I'm wondering, is there an opportunity to go back and at some later date and just to have a further discussion on that at a work session?
Sure, we're happy to make sure to lift that up in our upcoming work session with you so that we can have more understanding and along the lines of what you just said, collaboration and inclusion.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks.
Okay, Teresa?
My comment and question was actually concerning the
course approval as well. I was just wondering what the impetus was. Is it a new course that's being added to the math curriculum, or is it replacing another math course? What is there a history behind why this is being proposed for the coming year?
Ms. Wetstein, do you have some information? I'm reading it as you speak, but I think Ms. Wetstein has a little bit more understanding of this, and she can help with us.
The textbook is the same textbook that we're currently using, so we did not propose to review that curriculum, but the proposal from the high schools is to offer both an intro class, which is a half credit, and then to additionally offer a full year class. So in the past, we've had a course called Probability and Statistics. We're proposing changing the name of that course to Intro to Probability and Statistics, and then additionally offering a full year version of that same course. So essentially, the course and the textbook have existed, and we are offering both a pre-course, intro course, as well as a full course.
So no change in curriculum, it's just a change in delivery.
Correct.
Thank you, that's helpful.
Any other comments or questions on the consent? Ms. Wood?
Mr. Clausen?
Aye.
Ms. Phillips?
Aye.
Mr. Schwartz?
Aye.
Mr. Taylor?
Aye.
Ms. Upchurch?
Aye.
At 8:36, I'm going to adjourn this meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.